live streaming on Facebook. It's amazing how we just rolled out of a huge argument through the technical debacle and into the Facebook Live. You know, I pull the trigger and these boys roll, and there we go, kids. We've got it all figured out tonight. We've got hot video that you haven't seen anywhere else. A couple of different things. Both Oldham and Van were down at the rally, and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. The Trump rally recap show. It's just almost everything that's going on, and especially here in Tulsa. And the Tulsa Fire Marshal. The first thing we're going to talk about when we start out, the Tulsa Fire Marshal apparently and others have undercounted the Trump rally attendance. And if you're just living under a rock, you haven't heard it, but there's all sorts of discussion surrounding why the seats were empty, what seats were empty, how many was empty, how many were full, and just how many got in. And the count and attendance is all the discussion we're going to have when we start off. Also, Van and Breitbart, both caught the only two known violent incidents in the rally week. There were one of the videos we're going to have has to do with the violence here in Tulsa, and it was very, very mild. We're very pleased for that, and yet there were two incidences. Both Van and Breitbart caught those. Gundy loses his man card. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're a little hot on there, Distort. No, go ahead.
Gundy loses his man card.
Yes.
And that's that song. Remember, I'll take a mullet for you. I would take a mullet for you. And anyway, yeah, the mullet man, who's more than 40 now, he's backing down in the face of a big, giant black linebacker or running back. Norman Councilwoman, she does she's a pole dancer, gonna read story time to the children. A woman of white affluence, says David Van, gets arrested for impeding Tulsa cops. And the protests in Tulsa, we really had some high civility and some decent conversation.
Sure we did. Yep.
No, it was heated. Well, that was a real rough start, but we made it into the air. Oldham, you've been so polite. How's it going?
It's going great. It's nice to be back in the center of the country where people are more normal. You don't get screamed at for entering a building or a business without a mask.
Right.
And so it's very nice to be back here in the middle of the country with some sane people.
Present excluded. Van, what about you?
Well, good. I'm wondering if Oldham's going to share that T-shirt that Owen Schroyer of InfoWars and Company gave to him. Well,
now's as good a time as any, so I am now officially Citizen Press.
Yes.
Wearing my InfoWars.
And we are just rack tech here.
And
Oldham, your mic is...
I'm a man, Tom. I'm a man. I have an OAN shirt.
I'm 40 centimeters. I'm a man.
What'd you say about my mic?
It's just crushing down. We're having all sorts of tech, and somebody's dinging like they're popular. Which is
that was my phone.
horrible on the show.
Hey.
But there were, look, I know that I signed up to get tickets, you know, and my wife even signed up to get tickets, and we were never responded to like you could get tickets. So we thought, well, can't get tickets. And so how many people went? How many people didn't go because they didn't get a response?
Tom, that ding was Ethan from Tulsa telling you that you're too in love with your microphone. You need to socially distance, but you're fine.
Yeah,
appreciate Ethan on the techie side.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Oh, there it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
There we go. There you go. That's a little better.
Yes.
All right.
Memories of Oldham's. What was that airport with the prophylactic?
No, that was Naked Gun too.
Okay, there you go.
Oh.
Well, anyway.
All right, Van. What do you got for us on the real numbers? Enough of this tomfoolery. Tell us about the numbers.
Right. And I sat up there in the upper deck for, most of the deal. We're about maybe 3/5 full. That's kind of where I would put it generally. Their pockets. Who wants to sit and look at Trump's backside of his head? But yet, they needed people in there for the shot. But anyway, so that was the narrative. And it was disappointing to a lot of us who were expecting 100,000 people, 3 different venues, maybe more with the outside jumbotrons. But then all of a sudden, Tulsa Fire Department's fire marshal says, my count says 6,200 people. And we're like, where are you counting? So that's going on. And of course, the media narrative, all of a sudden, the liberal press is like, well, it's only 6,200. Don't believe our lying eyes. We were telling you there's only about 12,000. Now we're going with 6,200. But Bob Jack reached out to me today. He's working on it, trying, us local people have some relationships with city government. And so I asked him, I said, Bob, let's get a press release on that to explain it. Now, I don't want to put words in Bob's mouth, and I appreciate the legwork he's done. But, there was a lot of bad communication or no communication at all from the national Trump campaign. Oldham, would you say that?
Certainly not as much communication as I might have thought.
Now, I got a question. Does communication mean it's up to the Trump people to talk down, or does communication go both ways?
Well, to let us know where the gates are, for instance.
Anybody call to find out, or do we just wait to get the word from on high?
Right. We gave them our cell phone numbers in order to reserve tickets, and there were 1 million of us who did that. And that turned into, I won't quote who said it to me, but it was a data mining operation and a bunch of fundraising stuff that went on last week that would make Oral Roberts blush. I mean, it was just everything except tell us where to be, when the gates are opening, where the gates are at. We got an email the morning of finally telling us, after people waiting in line, saying you can't bring things like a selfie stick, bottled water, what you can't do. And there's just piles and piles of stuff that people had to dump or go back to their car if they had a car there, didn't get dropped off. So there was a lot of just bad late communication. And then in that email, they never told us where the gates were. So you had to roam around a perimeter that was probably about 2 miles circumference to find the gates.
When you say they never told you, you mean the Trump team, right?
They are the organizers of this rally. Exactly.
And you say you asked them for the information and they never gave it to you.
Oh, there was no way to ask.
Well, what was missing was an advertisement of the gates and their locations.
So
I found them by driving around the night before, so I knew generally where they were. Certainly the one on Boulder, because that was obvious where it was going to be. But the others, they did have. I mean, I knew that there were other gates. I didn't know where they were going to be, right. And so it was going to be kind of catch as catch can. If they were out there. Let's put it this way. It wasn't published in the newspaper.
Yes.
I don't know if that would need to be a bot ad to be able to do it. Certainly the city didn't put anything out. It seemed like there was a very little help from the city and the county who owns the center.
Property that decides where the gate who manages the gate? No.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean,
there's a name. There's a name of a company that manages the BOK, and they've been on the air promoting that they are anti-Trump.
Well, remember, that's the BOK.
That's
but
what
there's an outer perimeter through which you had to get through first.
Either way, if the Trump team is coming to rent the utility called the BOK decides who comes in, where, and when on what gate.
Well, into the BOK, but what David was talking about is into the outer perimeter, which is there was a large gathering area and a large perimeter around the BOK, and that to get into that area you had to your initial screening.
Yeah,
That's where
Tom,
you couldn't bring your water, you couldn't bring your chairs.
okay, let me add clarity to this.
Communication is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Tom, I had lunch with my kids yesterday. They took me on Father's Day, and they said, some of their friends live in a condominium that was gated off. And for them to get home, they had to go through all this crap. I mean, their right to keep and bear arms, open carry, was suspended because of the zone they lived in. And they had nothing to do with the rally.
Even though there's only 6,200 people there?
Yeah. But so you're right. I would say the rental of the arena that's done by the Trump campaign, they certainly should be responsible for details in that. But when the city goes beyond, or the state, or however, and then cordons off and even puts a curfew for a short time on a much bigger section of downtown, the city has a responsibility to its citizens.
The city through the BOK?
No.
Not through the BOK at all.
Remember, there's two zones you had to pass through. There were two separate criterions that you had to meet for the different areas.
I'm hammering the communication aspect, understanding that communication is not a one-way street from Trump down to the GOP locally. It's a two-way street. If the GOP sucks locally in Tulsa, that's a problem. They need to get to connection with the BOK, even if the BOK is not friendly.
No.
Well, again,
Not at all.
we are talking about not anything to do with the BOK. That is a separate issue.
All right.
Where they had. And they rightly fought people who wanted to try to hold the BOK responsible for illness and sickness that came from holding a rally. The BOK seemed to do their part actually really well. There were requirements that were placed, and I believe those were requirements that were agreed to between the BOK and the Trump team, and that was that everybody's temperature was going to be taken. They were going to get a little hand sanitizer bottle, and everybody was going to be given a mask to wear whether they wanted it or not. They didn't have to wear it once they got through security, but that's what you had to go through to get into the BOK. But before that was another area you had to go into, and that was what nobody knew, where the gates were specifically. There was no advertisement of that. And where that all falls, I think is a point for people to discuss in our comments. Because it's like, where is this? How could we do this better next time? Because this is not this is not the last time this is going to happen. 15
minutes in, rumbling, stumbling, bumbling into the show. My temperature clearly is hot. I don't know what I'm doesn't matter, though. So here we go with 3D Politics Live. Once again, 7 p.m. on Monday nights. I'm Tommy McCay, your amazingly rambunctious host. I've got David Van and David Oldham with me, both respected in their industry. David Van with SoonerPolitics.org. David Oldham with Constitutional Grounds. I sure respect you guys. That's why I'm saying. So the thing is, I'm all hot about, it ought to be so easy. I mean, when Pink comes to town, she sells 1,000 tickets a second in 5 minutes, and they're sold out. Everybody gets in, know. But the management team of the BOK isn't so partisan. They hate Pink. And this is one of my problems, is that we spend bipartisan tax dollars to support the BOK, and our leaders hand it over to a partisan management team. That is not representation.
I think you're being unfair to the BOK, because this is a different part of city government is where you're
and even bigger. It's a combination of the Federal Secret Service, which even shut down the interstate. How's that? And then the state patrol and stuff, and then the city. I do believe it's the city police's job to let the people know just how to get around, just from a logistic standpoint. But the Trump campaign should certainly make it available to the rally guests, how to get to the rally. And so I'm going to hold the Trump campaign responsible, and I'm going to hold the city government who shut down our roads to tell us how to get where we need to be. Those are the two entities.
And
Well-
my big bugaboo was the curfew, that the curfew for a period of time, because curfews are 100% unconstitutional. They don't get to dictate a curfew because that's easier for them.
Right.
And so we need to have that discussion at some point.
Right.
But anyway, it all ended up coming off okay, but there were some hiccups.
Tom,
And I'm
can I
curious
give
what
us,
everybody else thinks.
if I give us a takeaway on this, it's, Sooner Politics wrote an article, the reasons why the numbers were lowered. And I'd recommend people go to SoonerPolitics.org. It's on the front page. It's really not because protesters were able to block for any period of time significantly access to get in. It was more the overhyping of the campaign, saying there's 1 million people want to get here. We expect at least 100,000. And most of my friends said, my God, I didn't camp out Friday night, so there's no way I'll get in. So I just watch it at home. And that's really, in my mind, that's the biggest thing.
Well, and the Democrats, many of them, and one I think we shared some discussion on, and maybe on Facebook, but she brags about, I'm a Democrat and I got 300 tickets, and I deceived everybody. And the real takeaway from her comments is, look how proud the Democrats are to be deceitful, isn't it? Great.
It is, but it's not
deceptive, It's,
but it's nothing new to politics. However, what we did find out is a trick that'll never work again for the Trump campaign is to say you have to reserve seats, because they didn't even ask for any tickets of anyone. They didn't ask me to show a text on my phone, nothing.
Yeah.
Well, and if we're going to talk about why people didn't show to the degree that we all expected, there are a lot of things to talk about that. I've today found out about 2 people specifically who have been contacted. One who has been suspended from work without pay because they attended the rally. And the Trump rally, mind you, and I've heard nothing about anybody attending the Black Lives Matter rallies or anything like that, or any of the open Oklahoma or any other state rallies. But when it came down to Trump, it's like, if you go to that, then we are suspending you without pay. You must quarantine for at least 14 days. And one gal that has come up. The other one was contacted, but with concerns, but because they work remotely, for the most part, that's not going to affect them. But if they had to go in the meantime, they might have to do it despite HR, or they might have problems. But
they're punished for their political views via a medical assault.
Well, that's what's going on with COVID in general. That's become the de facto excuse for all things political, and we can just declare it for COVID, and we use it. The thing is, it's only going one way. Those of us who are going around without masks, who want things open, who want to take responsibility for ourselves, are not the ones who are doing this sort of thing. It's just the opposite. It's the people who want to demand that we submit to them and their desires, those who want to impose their will on us in one thing or another. They're using COVID as the excuse to do that. And that,
there's some people, there's some people from the Trump event that have now tested positive, and they're being sent to quarantine. And then everybody's like, oh, see, we told you. Now I have some real sympathy for these people who are suffering. And my response to that was, victims who are raped by the coronavirus should not be blamed for what they were wearing or not wearing when they were attacked.
There you go.
Hashtag believe all victims.
Yep.
Well, my comment. You heard a guy just wears a sexy mask.
how have they tested positive for corona this quick afterwards? I mean, the point is, did they go there with it? I mean, to have news come up this quickly when you haven't even had a chance to have the incubation period,
Right,
means that there's something wrong with the reporting. It's a narrative. It's propaganda press. It is not legitimate unless they are, as Craigslist, one Craigslist ad, they were somebody who went there to try to sabotage everything.
let me say, Oldham, though, the narrative on that would be that this person finally tested positive. They were potentially a carrier while they were here, not that they got it here, but that they could have been spreading it here.
Hey, welcome to life.
Yes.
That's the point, is I have responsibility for me.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be, I mean, if you're there deliberately, like the Craigslist ad wanted people to show up, they wanted sick people with positive COVID tests to show up and commit crimes of trying to expose other people.
Yeah. Now, I want to say, Oldham, you and I both went through the same running of the gauntlet where the protesters were screaming and yelling, and it was hard-pressed gaggle. And if you or I were going to be exposed to it, that's where we would have been. It would have been the protesters outside that we were crammed in that canyon with hardly any wind, and everybody screaming and yelling and chanting.
Correct.
So let's not blame Trump for it, and Trump didn't make those protesters show up.
Well, if you want a super spreader, it's comedian D.L. Hughley, who fainted on stage while he was giving his concert. I mean, here's the kind of guy who shows up to sick work.
To work sick?
Yeah.
That's what I do. I'm just saying, this guy's at his concert, passing out on stage, trying to be a comedian, when we all know that comedians do politics these days and Trump does the comedy. Do you see the humiliating thing where he does 7 minutes of total self deprecation about how he can't walk down the ice skating rink that is the ramp 600 times. Trump does a better Baldwin than Baldwin does a Baldwin.
You know what? I've been to the old Rush to Excellent tours. My first one was Oklahoma City, 1990. And Trump is doing nothing but the Rush to Excellent tour. This is exactly the way Rush would keep a crowd spellbound for an hour and a half. But when you talked about the stage and the super spreader, visions of the comedian Gallagher came to my mind, where you wore a raincoat to his stage shows.
Holy watermelon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to be our age to remember Gallagher.
Yeah, that's right.
Your age. But tell us about the violent incidences. Since they were few and far between, we've just got a couple of minutes before the bottom of the hour, 5 minutes before the bottom of the hour.
Well, let's start with, before we get into what actually happened in violence, let's get into the fact that there was so little. And the fact that with the protesters, I mean, and there were times that the bullhorns were bell to bell, and they were yelling at each other through the bullhorns in each other's face, separated only by the bullhorn, and having all of that kind of a yelling match and so forth. But there was no violence during the protests.
Right before there was no violence, there was this guy that came along, and what did he do, Van?
Well, actually, in the days leading up to it is when there was violence.
We had one, and I'd like to just go to that video here, and I'll have it playing in the background, a little bit volume down. I'm greeting the people.
Yeah, I'm a blogger, Soonerpolitics.org.
Oh,
really? Yeah, we've just coalition of bloggers.
Let's watch what happens. A
politics.
man's going to sneak between me and this woman on the scooter.
Oh, I'm a big Trump supporter.
Oh, you are? Okay,
yeah.
That's good.
But I'm also a citizen
Get ready,
journalist
here comes.
that, tries to
Wham,
make
wham,
sure
wham,
that somebody has good. Oh, here we go. I got it on film. What does he got?
Okay. So this guy ends up, he's a homeless guy is the best understanding. Many of us question if he isn't perhaps a little bit mentally unstable. But yeah, that was what I caught on Thursday
You call me?
afternoon. Pardon me?
You said mentally unstable, so I came back.
Okay. So what ends up happening?
Or did you just roll with the T-shirt?
Okay. So what ended up happening, and this was a Cuban guy that he beat the snot of. Guy sitting, middle-aged man from Miami, who'd come here, camping out, and he's reading something sitting in his lawn chair, and all of a sudden he just gets beat the snot of by this guy who for the last 2 days, people have been giving him water and food and cigarettes and whatever, being nothing but nice to this guy. And then this happens. So I'd run into a friend of mine, a reporter with Channel 6, and I said, hey, pull it up on my Facebook. You might just see, some footage. I know I got a lot of it. I'm not sure if I got the beating. And, well, he didn't seem all that interested. So then I saw a Channel 2 news crew finishing up a recording. I asked them, I said, guys, if you want it, you can have it, Well, they weren't all that interested because the narrative was of the black men doing the beating. Yes, I'm going to say that because then I decided to go up to the AP reporter, Associated Press, and he was just filming, doing little human interest stories, interviewing people, why you here, where'd you come from? I said, hey, I got some footage here. It's exclusive. You want it? And I said, you can have it. I said, it's some Trump supporters beating up a black guy. Oh, my God, his eyes lit up. And I said, no, actually, it's just the other way around. A local black guy beat the snout out of a Cuban that was here. No, he wasn't interested. So I went home, and I got some numbers. I called this Cuban, on a cell phone. I said, my God, I got the whole thing. And so I said, look, I'm going to publish. And I called out Channel 2, Channel 6, and I put it out there, and evidently one of you, I think, Oldham, you let me know, Lori Fulbright did her best to try to excuse why they didn't go with it.
Yep.
But Shay Rossi called me from Channel 23. She says, Dave, I want to go with this. Are you okay with that? I said, yes. So I did. The next morning, Channel 8 calls me. That's the ABC affiliate. I said, yes. And then I gave it to some Breitbart reporters the next day. And they said, oh, my God, we want to go with it. And I got to talk to them. And we started partnering for the rest of the weekend. I was providing them some eyes on the street while they were trapped inside the arena since 1 p.m. because that's what the Secret Service demanded. If you got press credentials, then we lock you up in a pen.
Man does his own press contact tracing.
Yeah, so I was able to do that, and then Oldham and I got a hold of the InfoWars people, had a great interview with them. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but they're going to run it too. So that was the first footage of actual violence, and that, boy, did that spike my web analytics. You want to see the next one? This one's funny.
If you're just joining us once again at the bottom of the hour, Tommy McCay here with 3D Politics Live, everything you've ever wanted to see on Facebook Live. I've got David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. Anything you ever want to know about state politics, the ins, the outs, the ups and the downs, SoonerPolitics.org with David Van is where you go. And if you have a question about constitutional rights and constitutional law, constitutionalgrounds.com is the place you go with David Oldham. And I'll always give you a snide comment at Tommy McCay on Facebook or Twitter. Well, I can play it either way. I can do your philosophical debate, or I can go in the gutter and do insults. Either way.
Well, Tom, let's give a warning. If you're going to argue constitutional with Oldham, get your homework done. Believe me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing mine. That's the only reason I think.
All right, you want to go into the
Here we go with the other act of potential violence.
Well, people.
It wasn't. It was showing off.
It was people, but they got hurt. They got butt hurt.
Epic fail.
Yes.
For him, he's going to save the country. That's how I feel, and that's something
Here it comes. See.
It still makes me cringe.
This is Ellie J. She'll give you a quick narration.
Just explain what just happened.
Oh, we got it.
You're gonna have to give me a copy. You're gonna have to give me a copy.
So we were enjoying our lovely interview, and like I mentioned before we started talking, there was probably some Black Lives Matters members on four-wheelers, and you know they've been coming up and down the street, and we just happened to catch them epically fail at doing a nice trick, and I think the supporters here very much enjoyed seeing that little mess up. A big oof, I would say. A big oofta. That's what I would call it. But
So anyway, as the let me pull this back off there. So in interesting comments, I'm just shortening this, is the people there, they were seriously concerned and wanting to help the guy, but the guy just was so embarrassed he took off, and he didn't trust his pilot anymore either. He walked back to Greenwood.
Oh my gosh. But that was the only two moments of real, you know, excitement that was caught on tape. There were some heated moments of discussion.
Right.
What I heard from the people that I knew that went was that really both, there were, to quote a phrase, there were good people on both sides.
Yes.
There were some people that wanted to heat it up, and both sides had people that said, look, we're not here to fight. This is important. That's why we're here, but we're not, this isn't a bloodbath. You know, it was, from what I understood, mostly people were civil.
Yeah.
That's what Oldham was saying earlier. Yeah.
Correct.
Yep. And, you know, America's Voice was there. Will Johnson, you know, he's a black guy with the cornrows and beads, and he's out there having some great debates. You can catch some great stuff on that network. OEN had people there. I didn't get a chance to talk to him. And then Owen Schroyer tonight talked quite a bit about it on his show. So, you know, conservative media is so important, you know, people that are going to get out the message, because we know unless they're the conservative media, they're certainly not the objective media anymore.
Well, at least objective. Yeah. Yeah. And I see you've got your OAN shirt on there. And of course, that stands for Oklahoma Acknowledges Natural Average Taxpayers.
One American News. And now I have to tell you, I didn't get a chance to meet her, but I got a gift from them, except that Chanel Dion, who she's a reporter, she didn't come wearing an OAN t-shirt. She was big enough, tough enough to stand by Oklahoma State University. And there's a story behind that we should get into. So I wanted to show props to Chanel Dion for what she did, because it's more than what Mike Gundy was willing to do.
And that stands for Oklahoma stands for United Natural Average Taxpayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Chuba Hubbard is now the coach of OSU. You know,
dropping.
We need to let our anybody who might be listening know what happened with Mike Gundy, because he started out. What did he say?
Well, he was fishing with his boys on a weekend, and you know, Tom made a good point. When you're fishing, you don't wear your fanciest, nicest clothes. You wear your fish wrap.
So what he was doing, he didn't say anything. What he was doing was he was wearing a T-shirt from OAN
on vacation,
and that was caught on camera, and the political the political speech police came out and gave him a hard time about it, right?
No, it's his Heisman Trophy candidate running back blew up and went to the press. Chuba Hubbard.
Well, like I said, the proper political speech police.
Well, yeah. He became that, but his relationship was more than that.
Okay, well, so he's a snitch to the propaganda press, to be the political speech police. And now Mike Gundy has caught a lot of flack, and he has backed down and apologized,
groveled,
for wearing a shirt.
Yeah.
And I think that and that just disgusts me that people would do that. But here we have a gal who makes no apologies for wearing OSU when you have a lot of OU fans here in Oklahoma. And people came from Texas and other states as well. I mean, how are we not, why are we not wearing, their shirts as well?
She's so attractive when she's racist.
So what I want to say, ESPN is very, very biased and liberal. And, they're literally the apologists for Kaepernick and the whole kneeling during, that. But far worse. That's almost a non-issue in my opinion. But, we're not having people bent out of shape and feeling victimized over somebody wearing an ESPN shirt or CBS Sports and things like that.
It's so incredibly arbitrary. The reality, if you've ever been in Oklahoma and you fish, you don't wear your good believe it or not, we have good T-shirts in Oklahoma. You don't wear your dress T-shirt to fish. You put on the T-shirt that has one last chance to be worn before you throw it away. It's your OAN. People are too stupid to figure it out.
And listen, when you're a coach, when you're a Division I college, everybody's giving you shirts in hopes you're going to wear it. Everyone gives you ball caps. I got to be really good friends with the TU football coach, Todd Graham. I did a lot of work with him. And I remember, seeing, my God, all of this just junk stuff that he would pile in his office. Shirt after shirt after shirt, So, they got these. They're one-time use and not even worth laundry to them.
My wife piles shirts up. I wear them. I go to the Quick Trip. And some guy's like, "Oh, you a soccer fan?" I look down, it's like FIFA. I'm like, "Oh, Oldham!" Ah!
And that's FIFA.
Yeah.
Talking FIFA to you.
Okay.
The thing is, what that's gonna end up doing is potentially suppressing speech.
Right.
Now he's concerned all about his income and keeping his job and things like that. Yeah. So he's going to do whatever it takes to keep everybody happy. What does it ultimately do? Ultimately, it suppresses speech, it suppresses individuality, and pretty quick, people in Gundy's position are going to know that they can only wear their team colors, and if they go anything beyond that, they're not going to be able to wear ESPN. They're not going to be able to wear CNN. They're not going to be able to wear anything. They're not going to be able to wear a sponsor. Well, maybe a sponsor. But
and I got something. Go, Van.
Okay, so this plays into what happened when I ran into Oldham during the protests. We were standing right behind the riot police, and we're standing right next to the number 2 guy at InfoWars, Owen Schroyer. And I had been talking with Owen and his producers earlier, and then I saw this box of shirts, these shirts, sitting out in the middle of the street. And I thought, my God, did somebody with the network have an emergency and just drop their stuff? And it was worth some money, especially here in Oklahoma now, to a real conservative. So I said to the InfoWars people, I said, hey, look, I'm going to cover this up, scoot it over close enough to your awning that if they have to come back for it, that they got it, because it's worth some money. And So we left it, and then 2 hours later, I come back, and I'm standing by Oldham, and notice that box is still there, and Owen Schroyer and his team are trying to pack up. And I said, I mentioned something to Owen, and first thing he comes over, he says, hey, what do you want me to do with this box? And I said, well, I don't know. It doesn't look like they're coming for him. And I said, and he opens up, he sees it. I said, and there were some money up here in Oklahoma now to a real conservative. And he said, yeah, they're certainly not worth anything to Pussy Gundy. And I'm like, whoa. And then he had even more choice words. And listen, you have to go to Sooner Pod. I'm not going to play the video.
All
But
the
he's
in the cows came. Okay.
yeah, it's on Sooner Politics. But he said, if they can, I'll put it this way, if they can emasculate Gundy, they can emasculate anyone. Because now if Gundy, who is probably one of the most outspoken, unapologetic, I speak my mind, Division I college coaches, if they can get him to grovel, my God, they can get anyone to. And that was Owen's point.
Yeah, he's no longer 40. He's middle-aged now. I'm middle-aged.
Yeah. Well, in fact, and Owen said, look, I was always a Gundy fan. And then we both took turns impersonating his famous, I'm a man, come after me, protecting his boys. Well,
Cuba did come after him.
Yeah, well, yeah, and he's not protecting his boys anymore. His boys are turning on him. And Schuber Hubbard, he went straight to the media and trashed his own coach. I'm telling you, the days of Barry Switzer, that would never happen. Or
I don't
Eddie
know how
Sutton.
he thinks he's going to get. I always thinks he's going to get playtime. I really don't. I mean, you do that. I mean, you're just like shooting yourself in the foot. I guess the running back, he's decided that the cause is bigger than himself, and he needs to sacrifice for the cause. I mean, if he even thought it all the way through.
Well, and look, he's a Canadian from my understanding. He's down here, and all of a sudden, okay, fine, I get it. It's a racial thing, Tom.
There's no reason to throw insults, David. Just
yeah. No, I didn't say he's from Arkansas. I'm being a little bit civil.
But
anyway, but the thing is, he's now, if he doesn't realize, he may be a prima donna at Oklahoma State. He may be one of the top contenders for the Heisman. He really is. He's that good. But the NFL is not going to look well on this. They do not like the Colin Kaepernicks, the people who make a social issue more important than their performance on the field. So that's my story on that. And that's why I said, you know what, OAN, I'll stand by you. I mean, look, yeah, I am promoting 3D politics. Okay, that's my deal. But I'm standing in solidarity with all the conservative news networks because, Oldham, what was it Schroyer told you? We've all got to become the citizen press.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
citizen press versus citizen tyrants out there. And I'm seeing it come down on the Twitter and the Facebook, which is where you can catch me, Tommy McCay, right here on 3D Politics Live every Monday night, 7 p.m. I've got David Oldham, constitutionalgrounds.com, and David Van, soonerpolitics.org. Tell us about that pole dancing councilwoman from Norman. She's got the cash in her purse. She purposely gets arrested for impeding cops, and I'm sure she can afford to fix those teeth. We don't know why she doesn't.
Yeah, and I've known Alex for a little bit. We both worked on.
She's a friend of yours?
Well, Facebook friends.
Oh, me too.
That's not real friends.
Go ahead. I'm gonna piss Oldham off. Go ahead.
But, she first told me she's running for state senate, and I find out she's running as a Democrat against Rob Standridge. Rob is in one of those bellwether states. He represents much of the Norman area, which is a liberal hotbed. Now, here's what this woman started out this week doing, was getting the Norman Police Department defunded. So she's on a roll this week. She gets done with that, and she comes up here. And let me tell you, and Oldham can confirm this. You got to try really hard on the streets of Tulsa on Saturday to get arrested.
Yes, you do.
These cops were very forbearing, very forbearing.
Yep.
But she got herself arrested. And she got herself bonded out 4 hours later, and she's so happy. Listen, this is street cred for her because she's got a Democrat primary, and now all of a sudden she's a hero with the anarchist group.
So she's the one that scaled the flagpole. Is that correct?
I don't know the details. The charge was, I think it was impeding an officer.
I believe she is the one that scaled the. She's not the one that sat in the wrong area and was arrested. She used climbing utensils to go up a flagpole, and when they said blah blah blah, you got to come down, she went higher, and then they
Okay, so that's the pole dancing angle. Okay,
that's the. Whose story is this?
Go ahead. It's yours now, Tom.
Damn straight it is. She's the pole dancing, flag dancing pole dancer. And why don't they do a story time with her? You know, let's have her go in and read something. A city councilor who climbs a flagpole to get arrested could go into the second graders and read to them about how, oh, look, here's how you become a great advocate for freedom of speech. You know, I mean, I'm not a racist, but I am a sexist. So,
Tom, 10 years ago in Oklahoma, something like this would have ruined your political career. 10 years ago.
Oh, hers?
Yes.
Hell yeah. Well, maybe I should climb a pole. What the hell's wrong with me? I should have put on a skirt and climbed a pole 4 years ago.
Paul Tay's listening.
You might get 6 months in jail.
Paul Tay's listening. I take it back. I take it back. That ramp was like an ice skating rink 600 times.
Yeah.
All right. Oldham's mad again. Damn it. I keep pissing Oldham off. Anyway. So, councilwoman, here's what I say. Like you said, Van, before I just stumbled off the edge, how in the world can there are teachers in Norman, Oklahoma, trying to maintain civility in their classrooms?
Yeah.
And those teachers say, look to your civil leaders like this that climbed up a pole to purposely get arrested.
Yeah.
No wonder the children will tell the teacher to F you. I'm not going to do what you say. You're white.
Yeah.
Why should I do what you say? So literally the councilwoman from Norman is creating unrest in the school classroom for the students in Norman. It's insane what's going on.
Yeah. I was 7 years old in the summer of '68, which they mislabeled the summer of love. You know, the Chicago riots of the Democrat convention, all that. I think we're in more broad civil unrest now than we were then. And that was the summer they killed Dr. King. You know, this is serious stuff.
This is one of the things that kind of ticks off, I think, the people who they call boomers, is that the boomers in 1965 already did the Second Civil Rights Act.
Yeah.
People in today's federally funded public schools, they have no idea that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was the second one. We already did one in 1965, and it didn't stick. For some reason, the people who have access to the freedom aren't accessing it.
Yeah.
And so they re-upped it again in 1964. And it's been 50 years of public schools teaching citizenship to those people who will become cops and those people who become citizens. And the people who are cops are killing people, and the people who are citizens are causing unrest. It's all the public schools' fault. Literally, the public schools have been training cops, citizens, and parents for 50 years, and it's out of control.
Yeah, I want to say something here. Tie this in. The civil rights marches in the riots of '68 were founded on a very legitimate thing of blacks were not being treated properly. I remember, I grew up, I saw that. It was real. And to some extent, when Oldham and I were talking there, we're standing by the police officers, you know, and I know they could hear us. And Schroyer was over there with InfoWars. And, we said, you know what? This is actually a healthy thing going on because nobody's being victimized right now. And as long as it's not being victimized, then the issue that all three of us have been arguing over the last year, whether it was the Blanchard police or, you name it, we're talking about civil rights. And now we got people on the left end of the spectrum arguing civil rights as well. There might be that the synergy of the two separate polar opposites could actually get something good done.
We talked about that case, and you're right, man. We talked about that case in Florida where the cops came out like it was spy versus spy. They rolled down on this gal who's sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning and gunned her down in her window. We did this story last year.
Yeah.
Up in arms about the fact these cops are pretending like they're Man from U.N.C.L.E. This is ridiculous. This is not how they're supposed to act. We're a year ahead of the game. Mm-hmm. Politics.
Yeah.
And that's where I would love for the conversation to, the proper legitimate protest to evolve and actually get to the fact that this isn't just racial. This is bad policing. It's bad governance in total for everybody of every race. And if we can get off of just the racial issue, I would expect that that is not to deny that there isn't racial problems.
Just got caught by the political correct police.
No. The point is,
both sides of the coin at the same time, then you can't be legitimate.
No. There's still a race component.
Of course there is.
But the thing is that if you fix and get everybody into proper governance, that fixes the race component.
Yeah.
And so it's a symptom rather than a cause. If we get to the root cause, that's the bad governance, the symptom will go away.
It is not a racial abuse. It is a human abuse. And as long as you focus on race, you're missing the nail's head.
Yes. Yeah. So what I want to say, what happened in the 60s and into the 70s, there were a number of reforms done. In fact, even Austin Peterson, the libertarian candidate last cycle, he said there are things about the Civil Rights Act that he disagreed with, went too far in that it put restrictions on private commerce.
Yes.
He said the Civil Rights Act was good in this way. It kept our government from being biased, that the government had to treat all races the same. You couldn't have at the courthouse a whites only drinking fountain.
Yeah, that was all the way back in Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution. So that goes all the way back to 1787. But nobody's lived it out. I mean, that's the unconscionable thing, is that we need laws to make us live out that we already have agreed is law.
In whether it's statutory or just culture changing, we began to live out the very creed that we decided was proper back then. But here's the other thing that was very much a part of this, was we had a war going on in Vietnam at the time. And most of the kids that gave their lives at the war weren't even given the right to vote, because back then we decided you had to be 21, but we could put you in a war at 18 and you never lived to 21.
Yes, I remember that.
Now, Oldham, what's that? That's a constitutional amendment we passed that put the age majority at 18, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
So there were some reforms that came out of there that everybody came to consensus on. And by the later 70s, we were so preoccupied with the sexual revolution, we forgot all those other things. Not me. I was a good boy.
I, on the other hand. So we got about 5 minutes before we pretend we're going to get out of here within the hour. I think we kind of already touched on what was the label of the last concept, and that is that by and large in Tulsa, we kept it together. I know that Trump took some heat for saying that things won't happen the same way in Oklahoma that they did in other states, and they acted like that was a threat. And it was brought out when my social media that I was reading is like, Oklahoma, they pointed out in a very rational concept, is an open carry state. There's a lot of these states where not just everybody's walking around packing heat, but in Oklahoma, Pretty much so. There's a lot of freedom around here. So all the people who are looking to cause trouble, they're like, well, I'm not really that much of a troublemaker. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just tie that in. See what you got. I'm sorry, Tom. Didn't mean to step up.
That's all. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's tie this in. You're in Oklahoma, where we have what constitutional carry or permitless carry is probably more accurate term.
Okay.
But maybe that added to the civility, because anybody, didn't matter where they live, when they come to Oklahoma, they could be packing heat.
Right.
And you had to think twice how you acted down at 4th and Boulder.
The Wild Wild West was much more polite than it was Wild and Wild.
Exactly. So there's a couple events coming up. I want to kind of use this last few minutes to talk about things. There's 1,000 Black Men Second Amendment March coming up.
Yeah, what is that? I saw that.
Well, you know, let's give a report on that next week. I don't want to say something incorrect.
Saw the head on that.
Yeah, because, you know, Tim Harper was down here. You guys remember he got crossways with David Prater last year, and they took away his guns because he was exercising his, you know, right to carry. And the unfortunate optics is he went into a primarily Black neighborhood and then showed up at the front door of a church where there were kids. And I told him and some mutual friends, I said, if you're going to go in that area of town, get a few Black men to carry with you, you know, because what ended up happening is
so wrong.
Well, we're in a political world, David, you know, and I know there's constitutional rights, but there's the optics and the politics.
Wrong. Even the need for it sounds wrong.
Of course it does, but I'm talking about making a political point. When you're making a political point, you don't want to be misunderstood if you can help it. And the fact that you're a white guy going in a Black neighborhood with an AK-47, it's a whole different optic when you got 2 or 3 Black guys walking with you.
I think I see what Oldham is saying. It's like the right is there, and you shouldn't have to apologize for it. And what Van is saying is that we're going to do everything we can, literally go overboard to try not to be provocative.
Well, and here's the thing. We've got to change hearts. We got to change minds. And sometimes we have to spoon feed these principles so that they get it.
That is what I love about you, Van, because I have nothing to do with that. I dish out truth, and then you convince them. Go ahead.
Well, you know, and listen, Oldham's right. On principle,
Yeah,
Oldham's right.
Convince anybody. I'm here to say what I think is true, and hats off to you people that are diplomats. I'm just not. No,
Okay.
I'm just the one. I try to get laughs all show long. No laughs. I'd be serious, and boom, I feel.
Yeah.
I've lost complete track of the show. I thought we were going to talk about other things, so
Okay.
I'm all lost. So
Well,
I have no idea.
we went down. I'm in the last couple of minutes. I just want to say things that are going to be coming up this week that we'll have to keep an eye on.
All right, hold it right now. We've had a whole show. It's 8 o'clock. You're watching Tommy McCay right here on 3D Politics Live every Monday night at 7 p.m. Tonight, we've already covered the Trump rally recap show. We talked about the fire marshal undercounting the Trump rally attendance. We talked about 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that could have happened. We watched 2 different videos from Van and Breitbart where they caught the only known incidents of action in the rally week. We talked about Gundy losing his man card because I'll take a mullet for you. I would take a mullet for. And then we talked about the Norman councilwoman who scaled the pole to dance for what I call the children to get arrested. And then we talked about the higher civility in the protest in Tulsa. So, Oldham, if you cannot keep track of that, that is your problem.
Well, the other thing I want to say, there's a brewing controversy just broke in the last hour or two about a mayoral candidate that I think we can give a better summation next week's show. And then we've got, my God, we're in the last 8-10 days of important primary race coming up. So we've got a lot of things coming up. People won't want to miss next week.
Next week, we're going to talk about Rico Wright. Is that correct?
Yep.
Rico Wright, mayoral candidate, came out on the 12th. 2 days later, a gal comes out and is accusing him of some salacious comments with dirty words. She said the PL word. She said the DT word. I mean, this is insane.
Yeah.
She said.
Yeah. So we got things coming up next week. I just want to tease what I think will be showing up next week's topics.
Oldham, what else you got before we fight after the show?
I forgot. So, we're going to talk about masks and
about his love life.
I forgot about it. So,
Man, what do you got? Let's get out of here quick.
Yeah. Salute.
Is that it? Okay. Hey, I want to say I am finally getting fast enough to be able to look at one other thing while we go. And I'm so sad that Blake Barber is not on the show watching tonight, because he has been one of our greatest fans and critics. He hates and loves us all at the same time, but he's not here tonight. But I want to thank Ethan Gunther for he's out there. And Ken Melton also commented on tonight's show. So hopefully next week I'll get fast enough to bring your comments in on the show. So I'm finally catching those on Facebook. But I do want to apologize to Oldham. I'm so sorry. Anyway, I love you, Oldham. Van, you're okay. David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. I'm Tommy McCay right here on Facebook Live, 3D Politics, and also at Tommy McCay on Twitter. We'll catch you again next week at 7 p.m. for 3D Politics Live. Thanks for hanging with us this evening.